Hi, I'm Dave Hilgendorf. Welcome to video 13, where we're going to talk about loving and serving others at work. We're in the third video of part 4, which is called Act Like Jesus, and this is based on the book Jesus is at Work, Having Joy and Purpose at Your Current Job. When you act like someone else and follow their ways, another word to describe that is that you are a disciple of that person. Jesus described in John 13:35 the one way that everyone will know if you are in fact a disciple of his, when he said, "By this all will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another." So this love is a big deal. Paul described well just how important love is by showing how much more important love is than many things that we would consider quote-unquote holy and good. He does this in what is called the love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13. Though I speak with the tongues of men and angels but have not love, I have become a sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I could remove mountains but have not love, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, but have not love, it profits me nothing. Paul then goes on to describe love, and it's interesting to me how his list is not a bunch of charitable deeds, but rather I view his list as more of a condition of the heart, as he describes attitudes and actions to avoid and to aspire to. I also see this list as a description of how to act around others. And let me read that passage. Love suffers long, which just means being patient, and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself, is not puffed up, does not behave rudely, does not seek its own, is not provoked, thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. I see this last passage kind of like Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, in the sense that it's impossible for me to live up to this. And certainly not all of it, and certainly not all the items, and certainly not all the time, whether at home or at work. I think the key to loving others at work is to look to our purpose at work that we talked about earlier, to love God. In fact, Jesus alluded to the necessity of loving God first, so that we could then love others in Matthew 22:37-39. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. If you think about it, God may have had the same thing in mind when he gave us the 10 Commandments. The first 4 commandments all deal with our relationship with God. The second part, or the other 6 commandments, all deal with our relationship with others. So what does this look like when we love others at work? In my book, I tell a story about a woman I knew at work who was a fellow believer in Jesus. She was having both health problems and money problems, and shared with me one day that she was worried about being able to pay the rent that month. My wife and I agreed to give her a check for her rent. Now, I'd like to say that's a common practice for me to be so generous. Not so. And I don't tell you that story to say how great I am, but rather to illustrate one example of how we can find a need at work and fill it. But it doesn't have to be as big a deal as paying someone's rent. It can be as simple as a smile or an encouraging word. 1 Thessalonians 5:11 in the NLT says, encourage each other and build each other up. 3 John 1:14 says, greet the friends by name. Those are simple things, being encouraging and speaking someone's name, but they can mean a lot. This one kind of hits me because I'm currently new at my job and I have a lot of names to learn. Unfortunately, I haven't been very good at remembering people's names at work in the past. It really can get embarrassing when you've been working somewhere for a while. It's not just embarrassing, but it sends a message to someone that you don't care. I have a suggestion if you're looking for a way to remember others' names at work, and at the same time make a deep connection with them and potentially be an instrument for a supernatural intervention. In other words, a miracle. Have I piqued your interest? That's a lot I just promised, and it doesn't sound like a typical workday activity. Well, I have found all those things to result from choosing simply to pray with my coworkers. This starts with just being a listener. When you hear someone share something going on in your life, or in their life, I should say, that's weighing on them, you listen intently and ask them questions to better understand what it is they're dealing with. Then, rather than saying, well, I'm sorry to hear about that, or I'll be praying for you, ask them, do you mind if I pray with you about that? I can't tell you how many times I've done this, and I've never had someone turn me down, even when there was no indication from some of them that they were believers. The key is to wait until the person expresses a true need, because they are crying out for help, even if they don't know in what form that help will be. It takes almost no effort on your part and just a little bit of courage, but it's one of the greatest ways I've found to love and serve others at work. In Galatians 6 verse 2, God tells us to share each other's burdens. Many of your coworkers are bringing huge burdens with them to work. Even if you don't pray with them, you are in a great position to share their burden by taking the time to listen and be encouraging. You know, work is a great place to love two particular groups of people that Jesus talked about. The first group is our enemies. Now, enemy might seem like too harsh of a word, so let me put it this way. Those people at work who don't exactly seem to be on your side. Take a moment right now and think of the one person at work who seems to dislike you the most or treat you the worst. Now think of another person who doesn't treat you very well, or maybe rudely ignores you or disrespects you, or just has a very negative attitude towards just about everybody. Jesus loved the unlovable, and he calls you to do the same at your work. So take a moment and think about how you can show love to those people that you just thought about. The second group of people are those who are ordinary people at the bottom of the totem pole, so to speak. People from whom you will not gain anything in earthly terms by showing love to them. Think about the people at your job who are kind of invisible. For me, it's the person who collects the garbage or sweeps the floors. I've tried to make a point at every job to identify that kind of invisible person and to reach out to them, learn their name, find out about their life, and be encouraging to them. Now, probably the best way you can serve anybody is to share with them the great news of the gospel. When you first heard about this book or this video series, telling others about Jesus at work may have been the first thing that came to your mind. Well, we're almost to the end of this video series, and we haven't addressed this issue yet, which hopefully shows you that there's much more to being a Christian at work than sharing the gospel. Still, it is important, and even though it's considered more and more these days to be something that you're not supposed to talk about at work, Jesus' Great Commission has not changed. And so we're going to spend the next video talking about sharing the good news and making disciples. See you then.